Guys, welcome back to Finding with Jessie, the life coach. I hope everybody's having a beautiful and blessed day. I know I am. Holidays are right around the corner and I love this time of the season. It's my favorite time of the year and my birthday's coming up, so I am a happy camper. So for those who are viewing me for the first time, a big welcome to you. If you are viewing me for the first time and you like what you see, definitely think about hitting that subscribe button and becoming part of my tribe. For those who already know me and you're coming back, a big welcome back. So guys, what are we getting into today? What are we going to be chatting about? What are we going to go deep about? Today it's all about generational cycles. If you're not familiar with generational cycles, another word that people use is generational curses. It's the same thing with a little tweaks here and there, but we're gonna get into it. So what is it in the simplest term without getting all biblical, scientifical, and psychological on the terms, right? Well, basically, it's when a cycle repeats itself through your family history over and over and over and over. And the reason why we're talking about it today is because so many people are trapped in it. So many people are trapped in it and they don't even know that they're trapped in it. They don't even know what it looks like. So we are going to be talking about all of that today. We are going to be talking about what it is, how does it develop. We are going to be talking about what it looks like how does it play out, like how to recognize it. And we're going to be talking about the most important part, which is how to break free from it and how to blaze your own path. As I always tell everyone with everything in life, we are the creators of our own reality. We always have the willpower, we always have free will to break free from anything within our life. It just requires two things, which is your one, acknowledgement of it, and two, your strength, right? We always have the power to do it, but you need to have the courage and the strength to go and blaze that path for yourself. So let's get into it. So what is a generational cycle? Well, it's patterns, behaviors, and a rationale, mindsets that have created a foundation and a way of life throughout our heritage. So it's patterns, behaviors, and mindsets that create a cycle that repeats itself from generation to generation to generation to generation. It plays out over and over and over and over. And a lot of times people are in it and they don't know that they are even in it, right? So this term is very familiar to generational curses. It's actually the same thing with a couple of tweaks like I mentioned. And some of those tweaks are when we talk about, like I said, generational curses is more about sin. When we're talking about generational cycles, is more about patterns, behaviors, and mindsets that are more fear-based, right? So what does this look like? What does a generational cycle look like? Well, it's gonna either play out in your family or you're gonna see it around, our environments, play out through teen pregnancy. It's gonna play out through poverty. It's gonna play out through victim mentality, mental illness. It's gonna play out through broken marriages. It's gonna play out through infidelity, adultery. It's gonna play out through emotional abuse, physical abuse. It's going to play out through a lack mindset. It's going to play out through fear-based, everything that's through fear-based. All of these type of categories that I'm mentioning, that is all fear-based, right? And that's the way it plays out through your heritage, through your generation. So basically, let's say your grandmother came out pregnant early on. She was a teen mother. And then she has a child, right? Her child becomes older. And then when her child becomes of age, she's in that teenage years, she goes ahead and repeats the same pattern. And then she has a baby early on. And then you come aboard, you are her child. And then when you reach that age, you also come out pregnant. You also have a child early on, right? That is a pattern. That is a pattern that's playing out. You'll see it also through poverty. A child that's raised in poverty and then they have a child and then they live in poverty and they have a child and they live in poverty. So a better way of viewing this is a person who is born in the ghetto, right? The ghetto areas. And they're, live in these areas and then they have children and then they get raised in those areas, and then they have children and they get raised in those areas. Basically, it is a cycle, and nobody breaks free. Nobody breaks the chain. Nobody blazes their own path. And this plays out in so many different ways. Those are two examples, but it can happen in marriages, right? You come from a family line that nobody has had a successful marriage, from broken marriages, and then it plays out again and again and again and again. And nobody, in that family line has had a successful marriage. It could be adultery, right? You had a mother who was an adulteress, and then she has a child, and her child does the same thing, and she's an adulteress. And then you're that child, and then you are unfaithful to your partner. It's a cycle again and again and again and again. Or let's say you're a male, because this usually happens with male. You have that generation of males who they claim to be the player, and I use that term loosely because players to me are nothing short of an emotional abusive person, and that is the truth. We sugarcoat it and we call them players, but what they are emotional abusive people, right? But you probably were a man that was raised in generations and generations of players, right? So that's all you know how to be. You only know how to be a player because that's what you were taught, and you feel that that's okay. It's okay to use women and treat women badly, and don't value and show women respect. Why? Because you saw that play out through your generations. So that is what a cycle is going to look like in modern times, and in these times. Sometimes people are just stuck in cycles, and they don't know how to do better for themselves because they were never shown better. They were never taught better. They see it play out, and they're like, okay, well, this is comfortable. This is okay. So how do these cycles develop? How do they happen? Why do they come into our reality? Well, it comes into our reality because of the environments that we are raised in, right? And how people are raised. I talked a little bit about this in another video. I discussed how, our environments and how we are brought up. I spoke about it, I think, in a video about emotional abuse. When you are, raised in an emotional abusive dynamic, that's what you learn. That's how you learn how to communicate. That's how you learn how to relate to others. And then when you become older and you start getting involved in relationships, you play out those emotional abusive dynamics to your partner, to the person you are, engaged in. And it doesn't even have to be in a romantic sense. When you are raised in an emotional abusive dynamics, you're going to play that out with friends and other relationships, co-workers, whoever. Right? It's just your love language. It's the way you know how to communicate because that's how you were raised. And in all these scenarios that I mentioned prior, the little categories, right? All those cycles, the reason why it happens is because that's what a child learns. That is what a child sees. That's the environment they are raised in. And nobody is saying, I want to do better. Nobody's acknowledging that there is a cycle. Nobody's realizing it because it becomes the norm of how they are raised. It becomes the norm of their family life, and they see it from generation to generation to generation. Like if you lived in the ghetto, and I use that term loosely, if you lived in the ghetto, and your grandmother lived in the ghetto, and their grandmother lived in the ghetto, and their grandmother lived in the ghetto, that's all you know. You only know the ghetto. You only know these areas. So you think that's the best thing since sliced bread. You don't see it as something as I need to break free from this. I need to go towards more. I want more. I want this dream of, a white picket fence in this beautiful area, and so on and so forth. You don't think like that because you were not raised to think like that. You were not raised to want more. You were not raised to go towards something different. The information that we're taking in becomes part of our core beliefs. They become our belief system, and you start thinking, I cannot do more. And all these categories I mentioned, all that is fear-based. All that is living in fear. And when you live in fear, you feel like you don't deserve better, or you don't know how to go towards better. So you're like, okay, I'm just gonna sit here and just accept this because this is all I can be. But of course it's not all you can be. Of course it's not, right? So it's all about releasing yourself from these mindsets. When we are children, we absorb what we see. We absorb what we hear, right? Patterns and behaviors, they are learned and taught. As children, we learn by example. We mimic what we see. We mimic what we hear. Our parents and the adults that are around us and our environments, that is going to set the bar for what we take in as our core beliefs, what we believe, and what we feel we deserve. So if you've always been around environments that have the type of categories that I mentioned before, you most are likely to repeat them. That's usually the way it goes. Now, I say most likely because anybody is capable of breaking free from these dynamics. Anybody's capable of it. But first, it takes your awareness to even realize that you are in it. It takes your willpower to say, I'm going to be the first to not do this. I want to be the first to go towards something different. I want to break the mold. I want better for me. I want better for my kids. I want better for my kids' kids. And the way you break that cycle is by changing your environment. It's by taking in knowledge, by changing the sensations of your DNA. And what do I mean by that? Well, I'm going to give you an example. So I read about mice, and there was a group of mice who the scientists trained to fear a certain shock remedy. It was a shock to their foot, by infusing the shock with a certain smell, like a scent. It was, I think, a fruity scent. So the mice feared the shock, right, when they smelled that scent. So what's interesting about this study is that they let those mice mate. Those mice had pups. And interesting enough, those pups had the same fear. Their memory passed down through the DNA. So the memory of the main mouse, the parent mouse, their memory was passed down through the DNA to their pups, to the baby mice. And these mice, they literally feared this scent. They were born with fear and trauma, and they were not exposed to the shock. Those mice became, older, and they mated. Those mice had pups, and those pups also were infused with the same memory. So the scientists were thinking, okay, well, how can we break the cycle? And what they did to break the cycle was to put the mice in a different environment, expose them to something different, a different type of scent, a different type of smell, an enriching environment. And guess what? It broke that cycle. So what's so interesting about this study is that prior to this, scientists believe that DNA could not be altered. It could not be changed. Like, once the DNA is passed on, it's passed on. There's no breaking patterns. There's no breaking cycles or whatever has been passed down through the DNA line. And this study proved that that wasn't the case. They did another study on human trials where they took pregnant women. So this had to do with 9/11. So during 9/11, there was 1,700 pregnant women that were in 9/11, that were exposed to 9/11, that, went through the trauma of that day. And when they suffered from, these women suffered from PTSD. And when they gave birth, those kids, they tested them for stress and trauma and levels of anxiety and depression and all this other stuff that comes with PTSD. And guess what? Those kids also suffered from PTSD. They weren't exposed to 9/11. They weren't exposed to any of, obviously the exposure that came with 9/11. But interesting enough, that trauma, that memory was passed on into their DNA. So why is that so interesting, and what the heck does this have to do with generational cycles? Well, if studies show is that memory and trauma can be passed on through your DNA. So it kind of changes your mindset, because not only are you capable of passing this through your DNA, right? Trauma is able to be passed through your DNA. It changes like how you think of things and how you should be healing yourself. Heal yourself and release yourself from certain traumas, because if you don't, you will be passing that down as a legacy, and that's not a legacy you want to leave behind, right? And this is not false. This is fact. This is science. A lot of people, like I said, they've heard it through the religious sense, but now science is backing up that religious sense. There is physical proof to prove that trauma and memory and all of these lower level fear-based things that we suffer from, they can pass through our DNA, and you can leave that legacy behind. So it's so important to heal yourself and release yourself from any lower level fear-based traumas that you have experienced through life, right? And that is also something super powerful to keep in mind, because everything we do, everything that we live for in today's world, we're not only living for ourselves, now we're living for our kids and our kids' kids and their kids' kids, right? That's how you got to think about it. Everything you do, every move you make, every food that you take in, everything you watch, every trauma, you're attached to, every person you have sex with, every person you're in a relationship with, every person who's abusive towards you, every person you are abusive towards them, every dramatic experience, every experience is set in your memory, right? So you should want to do better for yourself and put yourself in healthy dynamics, but not only for yourself, but also for your legacy, for who you're leaving behind, for your offspring, for their offspring, right? That's how you heal and correct generational cycles. It all starts with you. It all starts with you. So now you're living for more than yourself. You're living for legacies. So a lot of people, sometimes they're stuck in generational cycles, not realizing that what they're going through is a generational cycle, is part of their genes, right? They're almost predisposed to make certain decisions and go towards certain people and certain environments and certain things that is not going to be enriching to their life. It's almost like trauma bonding. You've ever heard of the word trauma bonding, right? So that is super important to know, because a lot of people are predisposed to certain types of environments, certain types of people, certain types of things that are not good for them. But just because you're predisposed to it and it runs in your genes or your DNA or your family heritage doesn't mean you cannot break away from it. That requires, in order for you to break away from it, what requires is your acknowledgement that it is there, that you are predisposed to it, right? And how do you do that? Well, you sit down and you look at your life and you say, wow, like, I didn't realize that, but everything I'm going through, these patterns and behaviors, or this life that I'm living seems to be a life that all my family members have lived either now or before me, right? You start looking at your family, start looking at your family patterns, start looking at your family history, right? And say, wow, I never realized it, but everything I'm going through, or, if I don't have money, or I feel like I can't do this, or I'm going through lack, or I'm going through depression, or I'm going through anxiety, or, I feel a certain way about certain people, right? Racist mentality, all that is learned behavior. Poverty is a learned behavior. So yes, it's super important to be aware of generational cycles, right? And sometimes, like I said, they're not conscious. We're not aware of them, because this is the way of life. This is how we always live. This is who we've been surrounded by. It's always up to you to be able to be acknowledge that there is something wrong here, or acknowledge that I want more. Why can I seek it? Well, it might be the environments and the people that you are around. And like I said before, you break it by acknowledging it and going towards what you want, going towards being the first one, like being the first one to say, I'm going to be the first one to graduate from college. I'm going to be first one to have a college degree. You see emotional dynamics play out in your family. You're the first one to realize the way you communicate is not healthy by educating yourself about emotional abuse and saying, you know what, I'm going to be the first one to have a discussion with someone in person and not, flip out, not call them names, not curse, not yell. Sit down, hear them out, and grow my reactions. I'll actually respond versus reaction. I'm not going to shut down. I'm not going to ignore this person. I'm not, going to manipulate and lie. I'm not going to do these things, because all those categories are forms of emotional abuse. You're the first one to acknowledge it and then start saying, going forward, I'm going to communicate in this way. Going forward, I'm not going to allow emotional abusers into my circle, into my realm. I'm going to shut it down. I'm going to address it, right? Physical abuse, right? That's a big one. That's a big cycle that plays out in a lot of generations. You know what? You might be in an abusive dynamic, and I hope if you are, I hope you get out of it. That's never healthy, right? But it might be something that you saw growing up. It might be something that you learned that you felt like it was okay. Or maybe you didn't say those words like it's okay, but since you were involved in it in your environment, you took it on like this is something that is okay, right? And that's never okay. That's never okay. But you could be the first one to break the cycle. You could be the first one to say, you know what? I don't deserve this type of treatment. I deserve better. I deserve to be with someone who's going to value me and not put their hands on me, not treat me as if I'm something they need to control. No one should ever try to control you, right? So that's how you break the cycle. You become aware of it. You become aware that this is unhealthy, that this is a cycle, that you want more for your life, that you don't want to be in this dynamic. And you're going to be the first one of your family to stand up for yourself, to have a voice, and to break free from the chains, to break free from the chains that bind you, to break free from mindsets thinking like this is okay. And it goes on and on. Poverty, you probably born into, a poor household. Well, you're the first one to say, you know what, I'm going to be the first one to, go towards, investments and IRAs and have a 401 account and have this and have that. Well, you can do that. How do you do that? Well, you're going to have to work your ass off. Let's just be honest. You're going to have to work your ass off. We are all capable of working our asses off. It's all about how much you're willing to endure. How much do you want it? And save. Stop spending your money on sneakers. Stop spending your money on, Gucci here and Michael Kors there and Coach this. Do you need that? No, you don't necessarily need that, And generational cycles could be as small as eating healthy and obesity, right? Obesity could probably run in your family because of poor choices within what they eat and their health and so on and so forth. So it's probably something that's within your genetic makeup, but you could be the first one to kind of change that. And that's hard. It is hard, but you can do it. You could be the first one that's going to hit that gym. You're going to be the first one that's going to change your eating habits, right? And a lot of people think like with, especially with weight and health, that all you need to do is just work out. No, you need to change your whole mindset. You can't go towards anything without changing your mindset. Anything you do that you're trying to make a dramatic change and you do not change your mindset, you're going to revert back. Why? Because you got to take the root out of the problem. You can't just, go from the top and take off the layers. You got to go all the way down, deep down there and start dragging out the roots of the issue, which is the mindset. In order for you to change that mindset, you're going to have to start educating yourself about whatever you want to change. And then little by little, develop your conscious level. Get it up and up and up and up. The more you are in line to your spiritual side, which is your consciousness, right? That's when you start elevating your mind, right? But you can't elevate your mind if you're stuck in fear. And fear base is, I can't do it. This is the way it's always been. This is the way it should be. This is the way I got to stay. No, you don't ever have to stay in anything. Never. If you want to release yourself, you have the power to do so. It just requires your tenacity. It requires your motivation. It requires your dedication. It requires your willpower. It also requires your free will. Everybody has a free will, whether they want to stay in something or not. Well, it's up to you. Are you comfortable there? Do you like your cycle? If the answer is no, then start doing it, right? A generational curse could be as simple as your family members all work a 9 to 5 and they probably work in lower level jobs, right? Things that are not paying them for their value. Jobs that are not paying them for their worth. Jobs that are not paying them for their, their talents. You might have a lot of talent and you're probably stuck, working in a Target or like a McDonald's, and you probably have all this beautiful talent and you're afraid to go after it, or you're afraid of failure, or you're afraid to be the first one to try because no one has ever tried before in your family. Everybody's okay with having these jobs that are paying bare minimum, and you're struggling and you're living paycheck to paycheck. Well, what are you waiting for? Go out there and make your mark. Go out there and show your family that you can be the first one to break this chain. You could be the first one to show your artistry. You could be the first one to show your talents. Yes, you have it in you. You can do it, right? You just got to have enough strength to be courageous to say, I want more. I am going to do better. And you can do better. You can be the first. You could be the first in your home to be a business owner, right? That's a big one as well, right? Poverty usually goes from generation to generation because people are not afraid. They're afraid to take that leap. They're afraid to take that chance. They're afraid to make an investment because they're afraid of failure. Like I said, all of this is rooted in fear. When you get down to it, it's all about fear. When you release that fear, you could be the first one in your family to be a business owner. Heck, you could be the first billionaire in your family. Who knows what you are capable of? You don't know what you're capable of until you go out there and try it, right? And people who are around you, they're going to infuse you with fear. They're going to tell you, oh no, don't do it. Don't try it. Why can't you try it? Why can't you try it? If you try and you fail, then okay. You pick yourself up and you try again. You dust yourself off and try again, right? Everyone is capable of releasing themselves from generational cycles, right? Everyone. If you're a male who's, grown up in that player mentality, and, or all these guys in your family, your uncle, your father, your brother, they're all players, and, you're like, well, I really don't want to do that no more. Or I don't ever want to do this. I want to settle down and be with one person and have that beautiful life that they talk about in the fairy tales. Yeah, you can have that. You can have that. It is possible. Everybody says, fairy tales are fairy tales. No, you can create the fairy tale that you want. Just pick the right partner. Pick the partner that's also on the same wavelength that you are on. Pick a partner that's also as dedicated as you are. Pick a partner that's also as loyal as you are. Pick a partner that also wants to break generational curses in their family line. They want to have a successful marriage. They want to be loyal. They want to be faithful. They want to, go against the grain and fight every temptation. They want to release themselves from the slavery of lust and being addicted to things that don't serve them. Pick a partner that. Pick a partner that's aiming to win. Pick a partner that wants to be a power couple, right? She has hers and you have yours, and then you bring it together and yes, it can be possible. You just have to pick the proper partner. And if you're looking at women who just look good, then guess what? You're not picking the proper partner. You're not releasing yourself from those dynamics. You're not releasing yourself from the cycles. You're not looking at the right thing. You can have it all. You can have a partner that is gorgeous, beautiful, sexy, has a banging body. She's super intelligent. You can have all that, and she could be on her game, and she's bossing up and going towards her money. That's her focus, right? You can find that. You can find that. But it requires a change of your mindset. It requires you to be as dedicated to her as she's willing to be to you. It's going to require you to give up all these chicks running around or your options. It's going to require you to, disengage from those exes and, those options and, you wanting that new fresh thing and you running after the chase. Yeah, it's going to require your changes to get that. But once you change, you're going to attract what you are. That's another big part of generational cycles. Everybody's like, why I'm living in this? Well, you're living in this because that is your mindset. You need to do the work on yourself. Once you start doing that work on yourself and you start leveling up, you start educating yourself and detaching from temptations, detaching from the lower level nonsense, detaching from distraction, detaching from everything that's keeping you binding, from all of that stuff that's keeping you from going to all of this greatness, that's when you're capable of attracting what you want. You have to be what you want first. You have to do the work on yourself. You have to do the work of personal development, self-growth, changing your mindsets, changing that. And that takes years. That's not something that's going to come overnight. That's going to take years of your dedication to change your mindset if you were brought up in a generational cycle. In order for you to change that, it's going to require all of your attention, all of your dedication. It's going to require you cutting people out of your life. It's going to require you going towards different things, changing your environment, changing your mindsets, changing what you eat, changing what you drink, changing how you move, changing how you act, changing how you speak. Yes, it's going to require a lot of changes on your part. But you, like everyone else, is capable of it. You just have to have the willpower. You can always be the first one to own that business. You can always be the first one to have that healthy marriage. You can always be the first one to be that person who's faithful and dedicated to your partner. You can always be that person who is not emotional abusive, who is present, who is able to communicate healthy with a partnership. Your father or mother were abusive. You could be that first person to stop that and say, I would never put my hands on my partner. I don't care what they do. If I have to go take a walk and a jog around a freaking building, 10 laps, that's what I'm going to do, because I'm going to dedicate myself to controlling my anger, getting myself some help, getting myself some counseling. And guys, never be afraid to get counseling. That's a big one. Never be afraid to get counseling on how to change your mindset. Okay? It's easier than you probably think, but you need to apply yourself. You need to see what the problem is in order to correct the problem first. And if you're having trouble seeing what the problem is and you're stuck and you're bound and you're not seeing where how do I get out of this? That's when you start seeking counseling if it's like a big issue. If it's not such a big issue, then you might need a life coach. So I will always link my personal services in the info box. You can always look there for personal services if you're looking to detach yourself from mindsets and you're looking to, set healthier boundaries and make changes for yourself. So that's what a generational cycle is. You don't have to live in it. You don't have to be bound to it. You can release yourself. You can set your own path. You can do better. You can have a better life, but it is always up to you. How badly do you want it? How badly do you want to release from that fear, from that devilish energy? Yes, you can do it. Yes, you are capable of it. I believe in you. You need to believe in yourself. And the rest will be history. So guys, that is all I have for you today, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.